So a comment on last night's video was, what a fool, talking about me, listen to Scott Ritter instead. And a few people have made a comment that I should go watch Scott Ritter. And I've watched plenty of Scott Ritter in the past. I haven't recently. So anyway, I guess tonight we'll talk about Scott Ritter. The point of my video was not whether I was saying what happened with the rockets, so I had an opinion, obviously, but I was just really raising the question, like, why didn't the news interview an expert about rockets? Now, Scott Ritter's not an expert specifically in rockets, so they should have done somebody who's an expert in rockets. I'm just saying they didn't interview anybody who's an expert in rockets, and why shouldn't they? But let's even talk about Scott Ritter. So I did go watch a video of Scott Ritter where he did talk about the missiles after the attack, and I thought they probably should have interviewed him. I mean, everything he said was true. Like, we know for a fact that missiles got through. We know for a fact that Israel will not tell the truth about what happened, nor the U.S., nor any military is going to say what happened, whether the defenses worked or not. Though, again, we knew that missiles got through. He said that they were mostly attacking military bases, which is true. They weren't trying to attack people. So anyway, the video is very good, and if you go to channel, I watched it in, but I definitely recommend it. So what's interesting to me is the comment, like, oh, don't watch this guy, like me to go watch Scott Ritter. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, but you can watch both people. You can watch, I don't think you should watch me, but, it's just interesting, and I feel that this person made this comment is young, and I certainly related to that when I was younger. Like, I'd get very frustrated, like, hey, this person has the answer. Why are you all looking at these idiots? Like, go, this person has the answer. I understand, but he doesn't have the full answer. I mean, nobody has the full answer. So the reason I've sort of gone off Scott Ritter it's not because, again, I don't think he's smart and he's not very observant. He called it from the beginning. In the beginning, everybody's like, Russia is a bunch of idiots, and, they sell off their fuel, and they can't even, all their efforts like theirs don't work out. And, it's always been their, I forget the word for it, but they're the Keystone Cops, right? And Scott Ritter from the beginning has said, listen, Russia's a real army, very capable. Don't underestimate them. They're no idiots. And he's been proven right? Because they're almost at 3 years and they're still at war. But many people don't want to hear that from him. I don't think he's like pro-Russia or anti-Russia or pro-U.S. or anti-U.S. I think he is basically an objective analyst. And but I do think he definitely has some of them, and I can relate to this. Some of them, like, he definitely wants to poke people in the eye a little bit. Some of his comments are definitely aggressive, but again, it's okay. So where I sort of haven't watched him as much lately, is I do feel like he misses the big picture about Russia. I agree with most everything he says, and by the way, a lot of stuff that he says about Israel to me is bang on, and he does. Other people don't say what he says. Like, he says, hey, listen, the pilots that dropped those bombs. He said this a while ago, months ago, the pilots that dropped the bombs on those apartment buildings in Gaza, they should be brought to trial for war crimes. They should be in jail for war crimes. It's a war crime to drop your bomb on somebody's apartment building. And hey, I agree with him. So when he gets passionate about that, yeah, I mean, I love the guy in that way. But on the Russia thing, I think where he has a shortcoming is the bigger picture geopolitics. And I feel that the West is just too strong for Russia. And I view the world, for what it's worth, is that you have the resource suppliers and you have the manufacturers. And in all wars, they need each other, right? The manufacturers need the resource suppliers. So my interpretation of events is that the Europe was all into this like clean energy and renewable energy. And so they want to convert over to this renewable energy, which is total BS, because there is no such thing as renewable energy that can replace diesel and oil and gas for the amount of energy that they provide. But that's a whole other long subject. But just, again, I'm just going to try and keep this short. So Europe is like, oh, we're phasing out of fossil fuels and we're doing renewables. So Russia, you have to sell to us cheaper because this is good for the planet. This is what we want. And Russia is sort of like, nah, no, we're not, because we don't agree with you. But anyway, this is the price, and China has already bought a bunch from us, and so you're not going to buy it as cheaply on your spot market because of this or that. So I think Russia and Europe were having somewhat of a battle about this stuff. And again, because Russia's supplying resources and Europe is a manufacturer. So Russia invaded, and I think Germany, right in the beginning, was like, oh, okay, let's just do a deal. But the United States stepped in and said no. And again, this takes us down to a very, bunch of complex stuff. But I think ultimately, the manufacturers of the weapons of the West, the modern weapons, will win over the resource supplier. The resource supplier that cannot ever get the amount of capital it needs to protect itself. So Russia will lose because it's just too much power. The only reason that Russia isn't losing is that the West will not, will not commit, but will not put boots on the ground. They won't risk lives. That's the only reason. But I think eventually we'll get to it. But whatever. I mean, Russia will either implode economically as it did in the 90s, or the war will get more extreme. But I just don't believe the resource country can ever make it. So that's why I believe that Russia will ultimately lose. And this is what Scott Ritter misses. So Scott Ritter keeps hammering on his early point that, Russia's going to win because they have a really good army, and the Europeans, they're not really prepared. They can't do it. They just don't have what it takes. And I get his point. I just disagree. And by the way, he might be right. So and it's just my opinion. I'm just explaining why I've been a little off Scott Ritter lately. But I did go watch him, and I thought his discussion on what happened with the missiles was dead on. Nothing he said I disagreed with. And but again, my point is that why doesn't the press talk about these issues? And then with Scott Ritter, what you have is a lot of people talking about like how he's like a pedophile, and he did. I don't even know any of this stuff. I didn't research it because I don't care. Whatever he did about that kind of stuff, I'm listening to him for his analytics. He's a Marine, for his expertise, and that's all I care about. So I don't care about that stuff. But it's definitely a huge push to discredit him. He was held up at an airport even. So yeah, I mean, it's you can't be critical about not so much critical about the United States, but you can actually say that Russia is doing these things without getting this pushback. So I understand the commenter who said, "Don't watch my videos." I understand your anger. Like, people should listen to Scott Ritter. I agree, but they don't. And I don't have any answer for it. I wish there was more lively debate about this stuff. They should have people like him on. There are a lot of people that the mainstream news should have on. But again, my point last night is it's rocket experts they should talk about in this thing. But now the press is just going on the general public can get the same idea they would get from April, which is that Israel effectively shot down all the missiles out of the sky and everybody's safe. And that didn't actually happen in April. As Scott Ritter pointed out, they sent a bunch of cheap drones, and they sent like 10 or so missiles that all hit their targets. That's what I believe, and I wrote that about in the Medium when it happened, that basically by Israel, by taking out the guy in the consulate, had given Iran a free penalty kick. In other words, Iran was able to test some of its really good missiles, and it knew that Israel could not respond because Iran, through back channels, had told the United States, "Hey, listen, they killed one of our guys in a consulate, so we're going to take a shot at them because they broke the rules." And I think Europe and the United States were all like, "Yeah." So they told Israel, "You got to take it now." And so Netanyahu, I think, it was a complete blunder on his part. And so then Iran fired some missiles. They hit what they wanted to hit at those bases. Whether they're trying to hit a pool shed or whatever, it doesn't make a difference. They know, the Israelis know, that they can do it. And then they did it again. They just did it again. And now we can see more clearly that a lot of these missiles came through. So, but that's not in the press. In the press, it's still like, oh yeah, they shot them all down. They defended Tel Aviv. No, they didn't. It's a complete failure. And Israel cannot withstand a real attack from Iran. And yeah, Scott Ritter says that, and I agree 1,000%. And we're at 10 minutes, so I'm going to stop. Thanks for watching.